Welcome to the Kingdom Factors of Little Rock, Arkansas podcast with your host, David Moody.
Hello, everybody watching and listening. This is the Kingdom Factor podcast. I'm David Moody, and we are very fortunate today to have a local business owner here with us, Alan Gardner. Alan and I, we sort of accidentally have this relationship that started years ago due to a guy named Terry Baskin. And Terry was a great guy. He has since passed. But as I look back on, on my life, I find that he was a dot connector for a number of relationships that I still have, and this is one of them. So that was a blessing to get to work with him and with Alan for about a year and a half, number of years ago now. But we built a great team. Now Alan is the CEO of that particular company, and he'll tell you more about that. So that's kind of our background, and Alan is since day one with Alan, I've known him to be a faith-based guy, a really good leader in the organizations I've seen him engaged in, and one of the guys that's you want to look to say, hey, does this make sense? Because he's just got that analytical mind, and he's been doing what he's doing in this space for a number of years, and I'll let him explain that to you a little bit. But I know him to be a faith-based guy, and I know that he also does what he can to incorporate his faith-based principles in not just the way he lives his life, but in his business endeavors and relationships. And so we're going to learn a little more about that today. So Alan, why don't you take a few minutes and give us your journey to where you are now in terms of business. How did you get started? What's that path been like?
Well, it's a long journey. I've been at it for a long time. Right out of college, even I was in the healthcare space. I have been with companies on the provider side, so hospitals and clinics and so forth. I've also been in the vendor space, providing solutions for healthcare, and I've been on the payer side. I ran the operations of a PBM for a number of years, or prescription benefit manager. For a number of years. So I've worn multiple hats, and RX Results is a relatively new chapter for me, although we've been at it for more than 10 years now. It is the latest and greatest for me. And RX Results itself, we got started in 2008, and our solutions are really to provide or reduce pharmacy costs for both health plans and patients. Typically, we see health plans and help them reduce their prescription benefit costs by as much as 30%. And we do that by applying evidence-based criteria and clinically sound principles to their prescription plan designs.
So just so people understand who might not be familiar with the space, some companies, they go out and buy a healthcare plan from Blue Cross and Blue Shield or Aetna or somebody, right? And it's got these prescribed, you get the benefits that you get, kind of. I mean, you can customize them a little bit, but you kind of get what you get. But really big companies can be self-insured,
right?
And that means that they've kind of created their own. I mean, they hire essentially others to manage all of that outside the company a lot of times, but they kind of do their own. They have a lot more liability, but they also have a lot more control. Right? Is that a fair way to explain that? And one of their biggest costs is drug expenses.
Right. Yeah, so you make a good point. So there's self-insured employers, meaning they fund all the healthcare costs themselves, as opposed to a fully insured program that is usually going to be employer groups that don't have a whole lot of employees. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but a fully insured plan would be something like you would get through a Blue Cross or a Aetna or Cigna
Right.
type plan, whereas a self-insured employer usually is going to have some size to them, probably at least 50 employees,
Yeah.
but up to tens of thousands of employees. And they're at a point where they can take on some of that risk.
So give me an example of some of who your target market is. I mean, it's not necessarily company names unless you want to provide those, but I mean, it could be a large plumbing company or it could be Walmart, I guess,
Right.
right? I mean,
Exactly. It could be. So our target is self-insured employers. At this point, we are not, even though the things that we're doing could greatly benefit fully insured plans, it's not what we would consider low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of hoops to jump through to do that. But in self-insured employers, they can make decisions relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that is our target market. And for us, it ranges across the board, all industries. So we have banks, we have manufacturers, municipalities, school districts, large health systems, technology companies, you name it.
Wow.
Any of those employers, if they're self-funding their health plan, we have services that could benefit them.
And I know when I was there, we had a lot of data about the trends and the increase in drug spend. Of course, everybody's experiencing it, but particularly if you're self-insured, you're getting to see it on a daily basis. What's that trend been like in the last 10 years or so? Because that's the whole reason that RX Results does what it does successfully, is because it's one of the fastest growing. Those costs have risen faster than almost anything that I can think of.
Right. I mean, the trend is still going up. I would say it's probably average, and there's a lot of debate about what the true cost is after you consider discounts and rebates on drugs and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, it's probably gone up anywhere from 4 to 5% per year over the last 10 years.
Wow.
Some years more, some years less. And you hear a lot in the news about the cost of prescription drugs. And there's been an evolution over the last several years, over the last decade, really, about the increase in cost of those drugs. And if you recall, David, many years ago, typically your health plan, your prescription plan that you had a generic copay. So you as an patient, you could get a generic drug for a $10 copay, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had your preferred branded drugs. So these are name brand drugs that have not lost their patent protection, and therefore there are no generics available. And those drugs, if it was preferred, you maybe had a $40 copay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had what they called non-preferred copays, or drugs. Those are drugs that were not preferred status for a prescription benefit manager for your health plan. And to incentivize you to take the preferred drug, they charged a higher copay on the non-preferred drug.
Yeah. Okay.
So they would charge $75.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the drug manufacturers having the non-preferred drug said, well, what if we introduce coupons and allow consumers to go online and get a $50 coupon? So now our drug, which is not on the formulary, not a preferred drug for their health plan, and the patient normally would have a $75 copay. Now there's a $50 coupon to offset that. So now you have a situation where the non-preferred drug is less out of pocket than the preferred drug on a plan.
At least initially.
Right. Initially.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where I'm going.
It's to get you hooked, right?
Right. But I mean, all these, to get preferred status, it's based off of the rebates. So for a manufacturer to get their drug on the preferred drug list of a health plan, there's normally an exchange of rebates. So for every prescription filled, we're going to give you so many dollars back. And the bigger that opportunity for rebate, the more likely it is it's going to land on the preferred drug list.
Yeah.
So then once the coupons were introduced, that kind of muddied that water, because now the market share was not truly being driven by the non-preferred copay anymore because it was being offset by the coupons.
Mm-hmm.
So then the PBMs and the drug manufacturers get together and say, you know what? Instead of just having my competitor as a non-preferred product, if we can exclude my competitor completely, like they had to pay 100% of the cost of the drug, then we can do bigger rebates, and then that helps with the market share. So you've seen over time that the rebates are getting larger,
Mm-hmm.
but a drug manufacturer just can't eat those rebates, and
Right.
they're getting pressure from the PBMs and other entities that are paying for these drugs for bigger and bigger rebates.
Yeah.
So now they can't eat that cost. And so what happens? They raise the list price of the drug. So from where I'm sitting, one of the major contributors of the high cost of drugs and the increased trend in the price of those drugs is all resolving around the rebates.
Yeah.
Which is,
and I remember too, even a decade ago, I mean, you were starting to see drug commercials. So one of the things that we used to talk about was, there's some drug commercial and somebody goes to their doctor and says, well, this is the drug I want to take, no discussion, no debate. This is the one I want. And even if there was a generic available that was a lot less expensive, and the doctor would prescribe it because it did, treat the symptom, whatever it was, except that the insurance payer, whomever that was, whether it was the insurance company or or the self-insured company, that was a problem, because they were selecting, the consumer was selecting a drug treatment that might have been, $400, except they're only paying $25, and the self-insured employer is paying the rest of that. It was crazy.
right.
And I heard not long ago there was some move to take drug commercials off of television, which I figured that's what that was all about, was that it was driving demand for very expensive, new drugs that were still under patent and had a high price tag.
Right. Without a doubt. Another large contributor to our overall healthcare costs in the United States has been driven by consumer advertising. Once that started, like you said, people are going to their doctor now and saying, hey, I saw that ABC Golf Pro takes this medicine and it really helped. I think I need some of that. And
they look great.
That's right. And it's not that these drugs are bad drugs and not that they don't work, but what a lot of consumers don't understand is that there are, in many drug classes, there are multiple drugs that have the same therapeutic result.
Yeah.
And just because the latest and greatest one that they see on TV is available now, that doesn't mean that it necessarily has an advantage over drugs that have been available for 20 years and are available generically. So a big part of our job is to educate not only the consumer, but health plans, because health plans don't, I mean, most benefit advisors or benefit directors in an employer, they're not experts in this area.
Mm-mm.
How would they know? If their doctor
It
prescribes,
changes weekly.
right.
Something
If their
new
doctor
every week, right?
prescribes a drug, I mean, they're not going to doubt that it's the right drug for them,
Mm-hmm.
but they also don't know that, hey, there's 4 other generic products that do exactly the same thing. And
Right.
so our job is to educate, first of all, and
Right.
then to also design health plans where we're able to convert people from those high cost, low value products to lower cost, high value drugs
Yeah.
that do the same thing.
So, boy, you spent a career. I mean, the medical space is there's so much opportunity there to serve and do good and all that. But boy, it is. I mean, as I learned, and I just got a little sample of it, it is a very complex space. I mean, many times you step back and look at it and you go, unnecessarily complex. there's a lot of moving parts, and you have these pharmacy benefits companies, for example, who have certain financial incentives that cause them to make decisions in their own best interest, not necessarily in the best interest of even their client or the customer.
Right.
And that was one of the big challenges for RX Results, and has been all this time, was that those kind of companies had such a strong hold on certain elements of the process and relationships that it was tough to get employers to do something different that was going to potentially impact every employee in the company, because it was healthcare benefits, right? So,
Right.
yeah, that's amazing. So, tell me about your faith journey. I mean, did you, on some of these podcasts, we've had folks that say, well, I grew up in the church, my folks were preachers. and then we've had some that said, I had no idea about Christianity or anything else until I was 40.
Oh,
And
wow.
this happened and changed my life. So I always love these stories, because they're as interesting or more many times than the career path.
Right.
So what was yours like, Alan?
Well, I fall in that former camp. I had a very religious family. My my grandfather and grandmother helped charter a Baptist church, which I became a member of. My dad was a deacon of the church, and so I grew up Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And I have cousins, and my dad had a large family, 9 children, brothers and sisters, and so all of these people were my aunts and uncles, and all of my cousins, and we all were going to the same church.
Mm-hmm.
And there was quite a bit of musical talent from some of my cousins, and so several of them branched off and started recording gospel music and singing all over the country. So I was brought up in a very Christian family, and did lots of revivals, as a child.
Yeah.
Which, as a child, you're like, another one? Seems like we just had a revival last month. Are we having another one?
That's funny.
And I was there for every one of them. But then when I was in high school, started dating who was the young lady that is now my wife for many years now. And she was Methodist. And so through the course of that, I converted to Methodist denomination, and still doing that today. But yeah, it's been a good journey for me.
So you've been involved at one level or another, engaged, all your entire life, really, right? I mean, have you done some missionary things? Have you gone on mission trips and things like that? Have you done any of that sort of
I have
stuff?
not done international mission trips. I've done a lot of local type mission work. Um, uh, Probably more recently, in the homeless community,
Yeah.
trying to make a difference there.
You can't count barbecue competitions as mission work. Alan, I'm just saying.
Now, we have done a lot of barbecue for mission work.
So we hadn't even, I mean, nobody knows what we're talking about. Alan, I don't know if you're still doing this or not, but I mean, for years, there was a crew that did, competition barbecue. Cause I went to a couple of those. They're great barbecue, but they did these competitions and were fairly successful at it, as I recall. So,
Yeah.
the nice thing about being able to do that when there's a crisis or something somewhere, that can actually be your mission, in a sense, that you can pack up equipment, show up, and feed people.
Right.
Lots of folks do that now, but
Yeah, and we get asked to do that from time to time. So if there's a death in a family or something like that,
mhm.
someone will reach out to us. And we have close ties to those families. They will reach out to us and see if
Sure.
we'd be willing to cook for them.
Sure. So,
And we always enjoy doing that. And it's kind of the extent of what we do now. We're not competing anymore.
right.
Tried to get our sons and daughters involved in that, and none of them were interested.
It's like passing on a family business, right? They said, no, no, thanks. We
No,
smelled enough barbecue. We're good. Thanks.
yeah.
So how have you sort of integrated your biblical principles and your faith into this very complex industry? You built a team there inside RX Results, and I always say, if you're, it's challenging to try to hold to your biblical principles in certain business environments, and uh, because you may be the only one in the conversation that feels like that's a priority, and so it permeates every relationship you have. If you're trying to do that, it permeates the way you manage, money in the business, and you guys have investors, and so
Right.
they have a lot of influence in some of those financial decisions. So talk a little bit about how that works with you, or how it doesn't work. Sometimes you just can't, it doesn't matter. You do the best you can because it's the right thing, and it appears to have little to no influence on anybody, but
Right. Right. Well, I mean, I've been really blessed to have, a great team of employees.
yeah.
And you mentioned Terry Baskin earlier. He was our founder. And when Terry and I first started RX Results, two Christian guys going into a company that was a win-win for everybody. It was a win for health plans. It was a win for consumers by making healthcare costs cheaper for them. I mean, they didn't even know that they could be spending a generic copay on something that worked just as well as the $70 copay they were paying.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so we started out the company as a very ethical company. There were times when we had drug manufacturers come to us because there was a point in time where I don't want to get into much detail, but everybody is probably familiar with Nexium, the drug
Mm-hmm.
for gastro problems. And it was kind of an enhancement, if you will, to Prilosec, which had been on the market forever. And so Prilosec was a blockbuster drug in its time, and then the same company changes a small isomer and produces Nexium.
New patent.
New patent. And they did, as a, be going through business school, it would have been the perfect marketing case study. They did a very good job marketing Nexium, but the reality of it is the evidence showed that Nexium was no different than Prilosec in its effectiveness. Well, in our program, we were trying to convert people from Nexium to Prilosec, which was now available over the counter and reasonably cost. So you can go to a grocery store and get this without a prescription.
Mm-hmm.
And so we designed health plans that steered people to Prilosec in the grocery stores and pharmacies. Then the manufacturer, the sales reps that were selling Prilosec to the grocery stores came to us and said, your plan is driving so much market share for our over-the-counter product, Prilosec. We want you to keep doing this, and we'll pay you to do it. And we were probably 6 months into the business at that point, and burning cash.
Oh yeah.
And these were not had a lot of zeros attached to what was going to be offered here.
Would have made you break even just like that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, that compromises what we're trying to do here, because 2 months from now, Prilosec's competitor may be available as well, and we're not going to care which one they take, just so long as they're not taking Nexium, right? So things like that, just doing the right thing, and doing that in front of your employees, so they understand that, hey, we are an ethical company.
Yeah.
We're going to be transparent about what we're doing. We're not going to mislead people, whether it's a patient or a health plan. I think that's important, and it provides a lot of respect within the culture of the company, and that means a lot. And at RX Results, even when I consider us a family, and I've been, when we're interviewing new candidates for positions, we'll bring in some of our other employees, and the employees will make the statement, look, we are a family. Alan's not just saying that, we really are. We care about each other. We got each other. We have each other's backs, and we're doing the right thing. And so over time, that just becomes what's expected in our culture, and it makes a difference. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, you did, because you were talking about your principles were more important than, additional financial support at a time when you really could have used that additional financial support, but it undermines your principles. And it wasn't just principles of the company, it was the principles of the owners, at the time. And of course, the relationship, I certainly experienced that when I was with RX Results. It was when I was there, it was a very family-oriented, faith-based, do the right thing kind of culture that you and Terry created based on your own guiding principles. And, I just thought it was terrific. It's a great place to work. If you don't mind working hard and you want to be around, faith-based folks doing the right thing all day, we are your people.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that, I don't force Christianity on our employees.
Right.
But I'm also not shy about letting them know that
right.
I'm Christian. And it's not so much that I pop in their office and want to do a devotional with them, and so forth. It's just, like I said before, kind of leading by example. and doing the right things. We, as a company, typically, if we're having a potluck or we're celebrating in some event, we will take time. I will take time to pray and bless the food and
Yeah.
bless the celebration. And even if all the employees are not of faith, they all respect it.
Yeah. Well, and I know too, because I experienced this when I was there. I mean, if somebody's got something going on personally, maybe it's a medical thing or maybe it's a family something, and they need a little extra support and maybe a few days time off that they wouldn't normally take or get. You guys always seem to work that out. It's you're taking care of each other, like you said, because it can happen to anybody. And I think that's, you know, that you treat people like you want to be treated. And that's everybody that I was exposed to in the company was certainly like that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So how do you, what are the biggest challenges? You probably touched on this some already, but what are some of the biggest challenges in your business, and how does your faith help you think about those challenges and sort of work through them? You got a couple of examples of things. I know, just the fact, quite honestly, I mean, RX Results was kind of ahead of its time in that, it took years before the conversation about what RX does to actually be a conversation that was going on within companies. I mean, you almost had to educate them first about what the challenges were that they didn't even know were going on,
Right.
and then provide a solution. So it was years before the conversation, but when their drug costs kept going up, then they started looking for some help. But so what are some of the challenges that you've been through, Alan, and how has your faith helped you?
Yeah, I think, there's certainly certain hurdles that, in the early days, we didn't really understand how pervasive it would be,
Right.
and how big of a hurdle it would be. But a lot of employers, like I said before, we have to educate the employers because they don't really understand the industry very well, and nor should they necessarily. But most of them believe that their prescription benefit manager is handling all this for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the last few years, as you probably know from news, events, and so forth, there's been a lot of hammering on those PBMs for deceptive practices and so forth. And so some of it, I wouldn't say that all employers are quite where they were 10 years ago. They kind of understand that, hey, there's some other things going on. There's some conflicts of interest associated with what the PBMs are doing for us, all those things. And so one of the big hurdles in the beginning was just getting them to understand the difference between what we were doing as a service company compared to what their PBM was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So our job was to help them. Our client is the employer. And so we want to make sure they understand that they're getting the biggest bang for their buck. And we were able to pull back the covers and say, okay, here's some things that are going on. Why do you want to pay for this $2,500 drug when there's a $30 drug that does exactly the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was that. And then because the PBMs are getting rebates on this, and I can spend all day talking about rebates, but I'll try to get it at a high level. But there's what we call pharma revenue. So the drug manufacturers are going to pay the PBM some amount for every drug that gets filled, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in layman terms, they usually consider that rebates. But rebates is just a portion of the revenue that's coming into the PBMs. There's other fees. There's like marketing fees, education fees, other discounts and things. So that out of every dollar that's coming from the drug manufacturer to the PBM, only a certain portion of that dollar is labeled as rebates. So even if 100% of the rebates are being passed back through to an employer, there's still income associated with that drug fill that
Yeah.
the PBM is going to retain. In most cases, not all PBMs are doing it that way, but majority of them are. And so when we are coming in and trying to get someone, even though let's say on a $2,500 drug, and I'm talking about per month, maybe there'd be $1,000 rebate on it. Well, it's still $1,500 balance. Why would you want to pay $1,500 when we know through evidence and research and many studies that have been done that a $40 drug does exactly the same thing? Well, because the PBMs are getting income off of that $2,500 drug, when we come in and say we're going to switch everybody to the $40 drug, they're like, well, wait a minute, you're messing with our bottom line here. And so we ended up having quite a bit of resistance from the PBMs because it was tied to so much revenue for them.
And how did you deal with that? I mean, was there some element of your faith that came into play there, where you're trying to be patient, you're trying to, I mean, you could see on one hand the temptation to, when they retaliate, we retaliate.
Right.
That could certainly have happened. So how did you?
Yeah, and
How did that help guide you through that period because there was years of that, right?
And it is a lot of prayer and knowing what the right balance was.
Yeah.
Because I mean, your top 3 PBMs make up 80% of the market. So all prescriptions filled in the United States, they are processed by one of these 3 PBMs.
And aren't they like Fortune 50 or
Fortune 20?
Fortune 20? Yeah. These are large, publicly owned, publicly traded companies. Yeah.
Right. And for a lot of our solutions, those PBMs, we depend on them to cooperate and put some of our programs in, put our business rules into their claims processing systems.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a fine balance of how hard you push.
Yeah.
Because if you push too hard, are they going to cut you off completely and say, we're not going to cooperate?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that has happened.
Yeah.
And then the employer, I'd say some percent of them will say, well, that's unfortunate, but I don't really want to change a PBM right now. So
right.
Love you, RX results, but
right.
Our PBM's not going to let us use you anymore. Or they get upset with the PBM and say, well, fine, we'll just change to another PBM that will cooperate with RX results. And so it's a constant concern for us. And it's, from a faith perspective, it's knowing how to handle that, not only with the client, but with the PBM.
Mm-hmm.
And being respectful of each of their platforms and businesses.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're going to be pushing hard for the client. I mean, we don't believe that healthcare as it is today and the way that it keeps trending up is sustainable. And so at some point, people are not going to have access to the healthcare they need. Employers are not going to be able to afford to pay for healthcare costs.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they've switched to fully insured, like we were talking about before, their premiums are going to be so high, they still can't provide it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's scary for us, but we feel like we're doing our part to help control some of that.
Yeah. It's kind of a David and Goliath story for RX Results, right? It's
It is in a way. Now, over time, so we have gotten entree into some of those PBMs that have been super resistant in the past. They still limit some of our services that they will allow us to do, but at least the door is open now where we're able to do some cost savings programs for our clients when they're with those PBMs.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, it's good for us, and it's helped with our growth. We're servicing members in all 50 states, DC, wow. U.S. territories.
Wow. How big's the staff now?
We have 25 people right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was probably
it
was even half that when I was there. So, yeah, it was a small band, a small but happy band of dedicated folks.
Yeah.
So, Alan, as we sort of end the segment here, I want to give you an opportunity, if you can, to provide some guidance to other business owners, executives, nonprofit leaders regarding, how they can integrate their faith and biblical principles into their business operations and culture, the way you and Terry did initially with RX Results, and you've continued that tradition all these years. Any words of wisdom to give them some guidance about how to make that work?
I don't know if it's any more than what I've already said. I think what I was saying earlier about just being ethical in your business practices and being that example for your other employees. I think every opportunity you have to let them know that you are a faith-based person, that you are a Christian. And I just think that's a good example as well. And it sets kind of the tone for the culture of the company too, when its leadership has that kind of faith and leans on that faith. I mean,
right.
When you're doing a startup, there's so many challenges. This is the second startup I've been involved in, and there's a lot of learning that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You learn by making mistakes oftentimes. When things are coming up and you're stressing over things, it's really comforting to know that you have a higher power that you can lean on.
And what is that? What is that
piece?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying that, being able to do that provides me with a lot of comfort and peace.
Help me understand that a little bit. Let's go one just a little deeper. So, you got the company's in some financial stress. Of course, when you're a startup, that's just a daily situation. If you can't handle that, you're in the wrong place. But, you've got all this competition. You're trying to keep good people that you've hired and build a team. What does that? You say your faith helps you find some peace and calm in that storm. And why is that? I mean, why do you think you have that peace and calm from your faith when it feels like you're standing in the middle of 3 tornadoes all the time, right? How does that, what is it?
It's kind of hard to explain, but it's just there's a presence there. And I've personally felt the presence a number of times.
Yeah.
In disasters. Several years ago, we were on a family trip with my parents and my brother and sisters and their family. And after we had wrapped up that trip, there was a terrible car accident.
Hmm.
6 of my family members were in 3 different hospitals.
Oh my gosh.
And I lost my mother in that accident. But as I was not there because I was flying back to Little Rock and
Mhm.
I was not in the vehicle with them.
Wow.
Sitting in the airport, get the phone call, and I'm like, okay, I don't know which ones are injured the most. They're in 3 different hospitals. Where do I go?
Yeah.
And people are looking. I mean, they're unconscious, or so they can't make decisions on their own.
Hmm.
And there was, yeah, I get a little choked up thinking about it, but
Yeah.
there was this presence that just gave me the strength to make decisions. Do this surgery, don't do this surgery,
Right.
and got me through a really tough time.
Wow. Man, thanks for sharing that. That's so you had to like fly back and or I mean, where were they? Were they okay? So they weren't even at their own home, right? They weren't in. They were in between where you were on vacation and where.
We were in Pennsylvania,
Oh my God.
and they were driving back to North Carolina,
Oh my gosh.
and I was in Baltimore at the airport getting ready to fly back
Oh,
when I
okay.
got the phone call. So
Wow. So you had to handle.
for one
You
thing,
had to
I
step
never
up and
got
try.
on the airplane.
You had to step up and try to handle that situation in a place where you didn't know anybody and you didn't have a support system or anything right there. I mean, obviously you did other parts of the family and your wife and all that, but
Yeah, and you know my wife, Stephanie.
yes,
So between the two of us, yeah, I think all in all we handled the situation pretty well, but we couldn't have done it on our own.
I know. You know our situation with Joshua, and the same thing happened to us. You know, I arrive in his room a few days after um, surgery to take his skull flaps out both sides, and man, I mean, it was dire. You know, you can't look at that situation. You can't look at the one that you were facing and go there. You know, there's just nothing. All my options are bad. You know, there are not any good options in a situation like that. What do you do? I don't know how you get through that without being able to lean into your faith. And just like you say you felt that presence. Same with me. I just sort of had this. I don't know, kind of a. I don't mean a vision like a, epiphany kind of thing, but I just felt like Joshua and Jesus were rewiring his brain, and he would be okay, and I had no idea what that meant, not one clue what that meant, but that's just how I felt, and I'm in a wheelchair, you
Right,
know.
right, yeah,
I'm, you know, there was just you wouldn't look at that situation and think anything good is going to come out of this. Really, it's just not good. And you were in the same thing, man. Golly,
yeah. But
wow.
I've had, I mean, that's kind of an extreme example. But even in business, there's a lot of tough decisions.
Oh
Uh,
man,
you know, if you even in raising capital,
right,
you're going out to get new relationships with investors. Um, if you bring in a new investor, what are they going in exchange? Is it the right thing for the company?
right. Do you
And
take the money? Yeah, I
right,
mean,
you take it. Do you give up some of that control?
right.
Um, what are their conditions? How's it going to change your operating agreement?
Mm-hmm.
All those things come into play, and really, you have to lean on somebody, and I choose to lean on that higher power.
Yeah. Wow.
For that guidance.
Man, thanks
Pray
so
every
much.
day to ask for wisdom in making the right decisions, because it's not necessarily a decision for yourself. It's for all your employees as well.
Yeah, you're making company decisions that impact everybody. So yeah. Wow. Alan, thanks so much for your time and sharing that really personal challenge that you had and how your faith helped you get through that. Yeah, any of us that have been there understand how that feels. And again, I don't understand how we get through it without being able to lean into our faith, because you've got an uncertain outcome, but somehow or another you have the peace that however it turns out, it'll be okay. I'll have what I need when I need it, sort of thing. But that's hard. It's hard to see that in certain situations, right? Hey,
I mean, God has a plan, and you just kind of ride that wave.
absolutely, yeah, and yeah, you're right. As I say, but my seat on the bus of life is 2 seats back from the steering wheel.
I like that. I'm going to use that, David.
I can see what's coming, but I can't do anything about it. Oh, hey, man, thank you again so much. I hope all those listening and watching will enjoy this segment when you get a chance to view it. And thanks again to Alan Gardner with RX Results. If you want to know more about their company, they've got to, look them up on the website and see some of the things that they get involved in. If you're a large employer, I would recommend you give them a call if you're self-insured, because these guys have been pioneers in this space for a long time and helped a lot of companies and a lot of employees with health benefits, drug benefits. So, all right, man.
Well, thank you, David.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.